Oh no! There's double fright fest.
Jim Harper, it's an alien.
You want some acid, Jim Harper? Acid for breakfast.
How's it going, everybody? Sorry if we scared you there.
Hello, hello.
Yeah, this guy is probably actually looking a bit healthier than I am at the moment.
Yeah, it's old beef jerky, man. If you get hungry during work hours, you can just take a little bite out of them. That's the way.
Hope everybody's doing well out there. Hope you're keeping well too, Johnny.
I'm perfectly adequate.
You're still alive. You're still breathing.
Still alive. It's a cat day, which is what I call Saturday when if me and my missus are both not working on the same day and the cat comes and lies on the middle of the bed between us. And he's like, oh, you're both here at the same time. It's luxury. I call it Cat-a-day.
Cat-a-day. I like that. I'm going to steal that.
And we might be talking about one of your all-time favorite movies, I think.
Ooh. Well, I shouldn't be acting surprised. We did tell everybody last week we would be.
We did.
We would be talking about it. And look, there's a really pretty kitty in this movie too.
Yeah, little Ginger Ninja.
The last movie. Yeah, old Jonesy's coming
Including
back.
His stunt doubles as well. Famous cat, I guess.
Which is really what the fans of the first movie really wanted to know is what actually happened to Jonesy, you know. And now we get to find out in the sequel. Aliens. Yeah, one of my favorite movies of all time. One of the greatest sequels of all time. I absolutely love this film. I absolutely love it.
I love watch Alien. It again today. I was very happy.
Yeah, and it's one of these things I always say it when I speak about Alien and Aliens. Really depends on the day I wake up which one I prefer. I love them both so much.
Yeah.
It can be tough. It can be tough sometimes. But today we're focusing on Aliens, the sequel to Alien, and I'm excited to get chatting about it.
Don't think about any of those other modern ones, even if I might have watched some of them out of boredom this week, so I felt like it, and then you just got to wash the taste out of your mouth and your brain afterwards.
Someday, folks, we will discuss this. We'll go through therapy together, and we'll rinse our souls out speaking about our feelings on the.
I didn't even know there's another one on the books for this year, but I don't think it'll be out this year. But it's supposedly in pre-production now, and I'm like, oh, what are they doing? They're going to ruin something else now.
Yes, Alien Romulus, I believe, is the movie that you're talking about.
I watched it's still following on. I read a thing the other day, and it said like it's a reboot, but not tied to this. It's exactly like that. The Bonaventura Transformers shit. It's like we're rebooting for the last two, but it's still completely connected to it by virtually everything that's in it.
Yeah, they don't care. They'll say anything to try and get you to watch it. I watched the trailer, and when I was watching the trailer at the beginning, I actually thought I was watching the trailer for like a video game. I thought it looked a little bit cheap. It didn't look like a movie.
So a lot of trailers feel.
I'm hoping though that they clean things up a little bit, at least from an aesthetic point of view, because I was kind of unimpressed with what I saw in the trailer. And usually the trailer is traditionally I thought trailers were for kind of putting your best foot forward and trying to entice people to come see your movie. But the Alien Romulus folks, I don't think were going by that playbook.
No.
But look, I don't want to get too distracted with Romulus, because I'm sure it is going to not be as good as the movie we're going to talk about today.
I totally forgot that a couple of years ago there was another bloody alien-related project in the works, unrelated to these other ones we've had in the last couple of years, that was going to be a direct sequel to these two, that was going to ignore everything that came after it, like what they tried unsuccessfully to do with some of those awful fucking Terminator movies. So I doubt it would have turned out any better, but I forgot they even existed because there've been so many production hell sequels and on again, off again projects related to fucking Alien.
I also forgot it existed until you brought it up. That would have been the Neil Blomkamp Alien.
That's the one. Yeah, someone made a fake trailer for it, and that came up, and I went, "No, this isn't a real trailer. This is going to be a fan made trailer." And it was actually really well made, fan made trailer. But I was like, oh, I forgot that existed. But yeah, before we jump into today's one, episode 45, which you can find very easily on YouTube by typing Boba Joe E45, it'll bring it up. And we did episode 46, Predator. And I wonder what we're doing next week. Could be Predator 2, episode 48, followed by a KAALLLL episode special in 49. We're going to cover the whole line of figures in that. And
Really
leading
forward to that.
we're going to have some Total Carnage, get into some other toy lines for all these properties, but we can also jump around and talk about the comics, movies, whatever, just to kind of whatever, and as well as do individual episodes down the track. And today's one, of course, is Aliens.
Aliens, yeah. We're on the march, folks. We're on the march to the big 50th episode.
Yeah, so what can you do? Crossover, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
All the stupid characters.
We're going to be bringing the carnage for episode 50. But before we get to that, we're going to focus on episode 47 here. We're here for Aliens, the sequel to Alien. This was actually the first movie in the series I watched. Is that the same for you, Johnny?
Yeah, definitely, because the this one was always on TV quite a bit, on repeats and every year or two, and it was always popular. And if you ever caught a bit of it, you would just keep watching it, no matter what point you started seeing it on TV. I didn't see the first one until, well into the 90s sometime. I finally saw it.
It was the same. I think it was something like 93 or 94 when I actually finally watched the first movie. And I
just
think
wasn't on network TV because that's when it was so popular that the network would keep paying to replay it at least once a year or so.
And strangely enough, and look, this is just obviously me being a kid and not knowing anything, even though, as we'll get to, they speak about the events of the first movie in this movie. But to be honest with you, when I was a kid watching this for the first time, everything felt really kind of self-contained. It was its own little thing.
Yeah.
And I don't think I even thought about there being a movie that came before it or anything that would come after it. It was just its own thing unto itself.
It didn't need to be.
Exactly.
It still makes sense on its own. It's still, plenty of films have little sequences covering, well, this happened just before these events that are still in one film that they don't have, previous films or whatever, just backstory.
Of course, watching the first movie does greatly enhance the experience. Once you actually do finally get around to watching it, if you haven't been lucky enough to see them in order, it makes a hell of a difference. And
I think if you watch Aliens, then watch the original, and then have a gap and go back and watch Aliens again, I think that works really well. 2, 1, 2. That's my favorite order.
Oh yeah. And it's it's a great little thing. It's like we've said it before with other series. You've got your T1 and T2 and Mad Max and Mad Max 2 and your Planet of the Apes and Beneath the Planet of the Apes. There's a lot of 1-2 combos that just work really well. Sometimes when we begin to drift into number 3s and number 4s and multiple sequels and reboots, things can get a little bit crappy, for a want of a better term. But when we're still
3, Alien 3,
when we're still dealing with just the first sequel to the original, we're still in good territory here. So
Die Hard 3 bucked the trend. That was a decent film. That matters to.
Oh yeah, and look, I'm not saying it's a universal rule.
Most of them,
they're just it tends to happen that once you get past number 2, once you get past that first sequel.
Third Nolan Batman movie, that was not good.
Godfather 3 is good, but it's not as good as The Godfather 1 or 2. It's just one of those things. Things decline. We can't all be Return of the Jedi when it comes to third entries. But we're kicking things off here. We got the opening credits, which is a slight update on the original movie's credit sequence, where we see the letters gradually forming for the title of the movie. Glyphs, that's right. We also get that nice glowing eye in the middle of Aliens, and we see the shuttle from the first movie, from when Ripley escaped the Nostromo just before it self-destructed. I believe the name of the shuttle is the Narcissus, just like Lex Luger's
Yeah.
nickname when he first came to WWF. So we see the shuttle. It's drifting through space and it's intercepted, and a salvage crew boards the shuttle, and they discover Ripley and Jonesy asleep in their cryopod. So we've had to reveal Ripley's here, she's alive, Jonesy's alive, they've been found, and we quickly kind of are brought to a space station hospital where Ripley is staying, and she's informed by Carter Burke, who's like a company representative, that she's actually been drifting through space for 57 years. So she's been asleep for 57 years. Whatever way her shuttle went off course, she drifted right past the core systems and wasn't ever picked up. So, as I'm sure everybody recalls, at the end of the first movie, her plan was essentially just to go into the cryo sleep with the expectation that she'd be found in a couple of months. So for her to be told that it's 57 years later, as you can imagine, was
Horrendous.
quite the bombshell
And by the guy from My
revelation.
Two Dads, and he didn't even bring in that big car chair or nothing.
So we also see a moment, so Ripley, after being told this piece of information, she begins to feel slightly unwell. Jonesy, who's sitting on her lap, starts hissing at her, and he jumps off her. He's not pleased with what's going on. All of a sudden, she lifts up her top, and we see what seems to be the beginnings of a chest burster about to come through her skin just before she wakes up and realizes it was all a dream. So quite the reintroduction we have here to Ripley and Jonesy from the first movie. And yeah, that whole revelation that she's been drifting through space for 57 years, it's a big deal. And we even see here briefly before she goes into the hearing that Carter Burke has actually went and done some research on the whereabouts of Ripley's daughter. So we're finding out for the first time that she has a daughter, or I should say had a daughter, because it's explained by Burke that her daughter Amanda Ripley has actually passed away. I think she died of old age. She had a family of her own. So Ripley here is after finding out that she missed the entire life of her own daughter basically while she was asleep, drifting through space, which is quite harrowing and quite sad. She's shown a picture of her daughter, like the last picture they had of her, and it's they did a good job there. They obviously got like they must have just gotten a picture of Sigourney Weaver and just
Yeah,
folded her up,
yeah, because
because
a
we
fictional
see
kid's
a
meant to
lady
be
who looks
somewhere
like her.
around 10 years old or so when she's
That's
seen them.
right. That's right. So upon learning of this terrible news, Ripley now has to attend a hearing where she has to explain what pretty much the events of the previous film and why she had to detonate the Nostromo spaceship, which the company are not happy about
Yeah,
at all. She's literally cost them trillions of dollars because of the value of the cargo that she detonated, and they're really, really giving her a hard time. They're rinsing her in the hearing. They don't believe anything that she's telling them about what happened to do with the alien and how it had like wiped out her entire crew.
and how the
And she's
android
just
tried to
getting,
kill them.
yeah, she's getting really, really stressed. And the whole time she's discussing what's happened. In the background, we see images of the cast from the first movie, which is a really nice touch. We kind of see like their photographs on display, and there's a little kind of bio about a little biography about their lives and their work history. It's a nice little touch here. But the company, they're having none of it. They don't believe Ripley. They suspend her license to work. They basically just treat her like a piece of shit. And
Mm.
we do get a great outburst from Ripley where she's like picking up all their documents and is like, all this bullshit that you think is so important, you can just kiss all that goodbye, because she's really trying to explain to them, like, you know, how dangerous this creature was.
And there are documents, but it's like a corporate cover-up where only certain people know about it, and they've hidden this information because they want to secretly, you know, find out more about these aliens.
Oh yeah, she's totally against them, and they're totally against her. They're just dismissing everything she said, everything she's told them about what happened, and the hearing ends. They close the case against her, obviously, and she's given like psychiatric probation. I think they say like for a period of 6 months, so she has to like, you know, attend all
she's
these like
basically traumatized, and they think she's nuts, and they're like, "Well, you're fired, but we're not taking criminal action against you for all the damages, and we don't believe you." And that's why she starts saying it's absolute.
Come on, don't bullshit me.
Bullshit.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Bullshit.
Bullshit. You said so. It's all bullshit. All.
It's all bullshit. As Arnold knows.
And it is all bullshit. All they really are concerned about is what happened to their property. They don't really care about
just
her
the bottom line.
at all. There are a few interesting Easter eggs in this moment, or one in particular anyway, that it's real one of those, you know, you have to pause at the right time to see. But when they're displaying information on the crew on the screen, when it gets to Dallas, who was played by Tom Skerritt in the first movie and who was captain of the Nostromo in the first movie, on his actual file, if you zoom in to what's written about him, it says like he's a former employee of the KAALLL Corporation, which is the company that make the androids in Blade Runner. So that's an interesting little
that's fun.
Little Easter egg that's thrown in there. I always thought that was a nice touch when I found out about it. But yeah, poor Ripley, she gets a real doing here in the hearing, and it just does not go her way at all.
Nah, she just gets screwed after floating around in space for decades.
Corporations will always screw you, folks. Not the Boba Joe Corporation, though. We look after our employees.
It's very insidious, and then in a lot of the expanded lore and the comics and other stuff, they kind of build up more of the Weyland-Yutani stuff quite well, and they're always just so insidious. And it's like watching, I don't know, RoboCop and stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, we're great, we're trying to fix everything for everybody, but it's like, you know, we're funding secret wars and we're making bioweapons and people are dying and we're covering up all the stuff we're actually doing, and then we're making a buck.
Yeah, typical corporate morals at play. And
and it is very I do like that here, that the military is like the friendly folk, and whereas the corporation like the evil bastards on this.
Yeah, I think this is probably a good time to mention as well that the version of the movie we're discussing here is the special edition with the extended footage. That's the reason why we were able to see that moment with Ripley talking about her daughter, which wasn't in the original cut. And this next moment that's actually quite important was also not in the original cut, but has been included for the special edition, and that is,
I think it's fine for the theatrical to make it move along, but like for the home version, I mean, this to me is like the best version for it to watch at home.
Oh yeah, big time. So we see the planet known as LV426. I believe that's right, LV426. Yeah, that's the name of the planet. So the planet, we didn't have a name for it in the first movie. It was just simply the planet. But here we see it's been designated a name. It now has a breathable atmosphere because the planet has been colonized, and the colony has set up what's called an atmosphere processor, which essentially just makes the air breathable.
Terraform.
So we don't they've terraformed the planet. We don't need to be walking around in those big bulky spacesuits anymore like we did in the first movie. The weather, unfortunately, is still garbage on this planet. It's still really windy and rainy. They don't seem to get any sun.
The last 2 days.
Yeah, I think the deal with LV426, as they kind of mentioned in the first movie as well, it's very like mineral rich. It's even though it's essentially a rock in space, there's lots of valuable materials to be mined and refined and taken from it. So it's just
Plenty of
one of these
lightning storms.
commodity worlds. Yeah, it's just one of these planets. It's a shithole, but we're going to go in, we're going to mine it and strip it for everything it's worth, and we'll do some survey expeditions as well, just in case there's anything valuable on the planet that would be of any use to the company. And it's on one of these survey missions that we meet the family here. So it's Newt and her brother Timmy, and also their parents. So they stumble across the ship from the first movie, and the parents decide to go in and investigate, and they do what any other responsible parent would do, and they leave their two young children
Yeah,
in a
unattended.
vehicle in the middle of bad weather, in the middle of nowhere, while they walk into some alien ship to investigate. So like they're obviously good parents, and
Yeah.
they make sensible decisions. I think we can establish that. So they take off, and we see there's a little bit of a passage of time, and Newt turns to her brother Timmy, and she's like, look, they've been gone a really long time. And next thing, the door of the vehicle just swings open, and it's their mother. She's screaming, she's crying, and she's grabbing the radio and trying to call for help. And Newt looks out of the vehicle, and she sees her father laying on the ground with a face hugger on his face. So we know what's coming. Bad things are in store for the colony here. And I have to say, for the first time, when I first watched Aliens, it was the bare bones theatrical cut,
Yeah, same.
and I never even knew the special edition was a thing until I discovered it completely by accident. I had to go round to my parents were visiting their friends. They live like in a town just kind of adjacent to where we were living, and they took me with them. And it's one of those things where the adults are all kind of sitting in one room talking, and you're just kind of left there with their TV to entertain yourself. So they actually had the Sky satellite TV at the time, which
Yeah.
was a big deal, and they had the movie channels. So I was flicking through the movie channels, and Aliens was there, and it's like, oh, I know Aliens, I'm going to watch Aliens, but I didn't realize it was the special edition. So when I first started seeing all this extra footage, my mind was like totally blown. I couldn't believe there was so much stuff that I hadn't watched before. And I didn't even realize it was a special edition. I just assumed that my own VHS copy must have been like some censored version, or was like missing a lot of stuff. Like I couldn't comprehend that they'd actually
Yeah,
made
there's no way to know.
a second version. So I was very excited to see all
I
this
didn't get to
stuff.
see the extra scenes and that were filmed as part of the original film, but cut down to make the theatrical run shorter and that for running time. I didn't get to see it until the Blu-ray version came out. I knew it existed, but then I saw it, watched on that, and finally got to see those scenes.
Yeah, and it's very rewarding, especially if you're so used to watching that first theatrical cut.
Yeah.
It's just so refreshing, and really just
I was looking
enhances
forward
your
to it. I was like, oh,
experience.
great. Because I had I didn't buy the individual ones. There's been multiple box sets now, but they put out one, the mother one or whatever. It had like the first 4 films, but every film had the commentary. I think some of them had 2 commentaries, and every film had like a second disc and hours of extras. And that was really the reason I got that set, to watch all the extras for the films.
So Newt's dad, he gets got, and we cut to Ripley, who's in her living quarters. She seems to live in a pretty cramped little apartment space in a company building. She's sitting there with Jonesy. Ripley is very like Sarah Connor in the sense that they both
Yeah.
love just smoking cigarettes and not flicking the ash. They'll leave that ash hanging there. They don't give a shit. Their minds are too preoccupied with the traumatic experiences that they've went through to bother flicking the ash on their cigarette when they're smoking. So
Yeah,
Ripley,
there's a real
she's
parallel from Terminator 1 and 2 to Alien 1 and 2. So you got, obviously you got an actor that's in shares across those media, and Michael Biehn or Biehn, but that you've got this horrible monster. One's a robot, one's an alien. But where the first movie, something horrible happens to a lady, she survives. But then in the next movie, people don't believe her and like, oh, you're crazy, you're crazy. So,
yeah. And it's even though the change that Ripley goes through compared to Sarah Connor is probably not as extreme, because Ripley in the first movie, she is very capable and intelligent, though she is quite somewhat kind of panicky and afraid, obviously, of the alien, as anybody would be. Whereas
she's traumatized, but she didn't get locked up in the nut house like Sarah Connor did. So
exactly. Her level of PTSD is probably not as great as Sarah Connor's, But yeah, she's in this movie though, she evolves from being like a capable, competent officer into like a real fighting badass though. So there is still some kind of transformation in her character in that sense. But we see here she's sitting in her room, she's smoking, she's chilling with Jonesy, and she gets a knock on the door. And it's everybody's favorite company man, Carter Burke. And he is here with Lieutenant Gorman, who he introduces and explains that he's a member of the Colonial Marine Corps. And they're coming to her basically with a proposition. So they've lost contact with the colony on LV-426. They're not sure why, but just to be on the safe side, and just in case that the story Ripley has told them has now turned out to be true, they want her to accompany them to the planet to check out what's going on with the colonists, and also to to verify and possibly to prove to them and prove to herself that the story she has told is true. So if what she said is true and the colonists have stumbled across this ship, then they may need her expertise in this matter. But look, she's not happy about this at all. She's like, why would I want to go back there? And plus,
just woken up,
guys
just got out there.
Yeah, you guys threw me to the wolves during the hearing, and now all of a sudden you want me to cooperate and agree to go back with you to this planet. But they sweetened the deal somewhat, saying, look, that if you do agree to do this, we'll actually be able to reinstate you, and you'll get your job back, and you'll be back to your full rank, which I suppose would be a big deal. Like at the moment, she's no way to make a living. She's kind of stuck doing what she's doing. She has no real prospects, so she begrudgingly agrees to accompany them on this mission. And at this moment as well, at this scene, this is the last time we see Jonesy the cat in an alien movie. So he's sitting, he's looking at her. He's a gorgeous cat, by the way, Jonesy.
Yeah,
he's a beautiful, beautiful cat. And Ripley looks back at him and she's like, you little shithead, you're staying here. And Jonesy just kind of gives her this look like, okay, bitch, if you want to go do that, you go do that. I'll be happy enough to stay here. So we never actually know what happens to Jonesy. And I just kind of think people are kind of like, well, who gives a fuck? He's a cat. He's the only other survivor from the first movie.
Yeah, that's
He's
right.
the only other character who
I
survives.
hope
And he's
somebody on
made
that
it into the
space
second
station or
movie.
whatever looked after him.
And look, I suppose we can say he's one of the survivors of this movie now as well, because he stays behind, and we can only assume, hopefully, that somebody else adopted him after Alan Ripley never returned home. We can only hope. Little Jonesy the cutie pie. So we cut to the Sulaco, which is the Colonial Marines ship. And we get some scenes that are actually very reminiscent from the first movie. We get footage of a ship that seems to be very silent. There's nobody moving around. Everything's very quiet. Next thing we hear the hum of like computers starting up and machines turning on, and the area that we're looking at is illuminated, and we see that it's filled with cryopods like in the first movie, and they all open together, and one by one we're introduced to the Colonial Marines, who are just as Sergeant Apone would say, a real squad of badasses. So there's
I love he has a cigar the moment before he even moves the rest of his body, he just shoves the cigar in his mouth.
Yeah, moment that cryopod comes up, he sticks that cigar in his mouth. He's dying for a smoke of that stogie. And we see this is a great shot, by the way. This exact shot I used to have as the screensaver from my computer back in the day. We see all the main Marines here pretty much. So we've got Corporal Dwayne Hicks, my favorite, and half of my name. We got Hudson, we got Vazgaz, we got Apone, we got Frost, Dietrich, Drake. I'm sure I'm leaving out some people, Pharaoh. Great bunch of characters here, the Colonial Marines. We also see Bishop, who is the android or artificial person, as the term he prefers. He's stationed on the ship. And also eating breakfast there down at the end of the table, we see with Ripley, Lieutenant Gorman, and Carter Burke. So yeah, we're introduced to all these characters in a kind of similar fashion to how we're introduced to the crew from the first film. They're all eating breakfast together. We're picking up bits and pieces of conversation. It's all very natural dialogue as well. It's definitely the type of stuff that you'd expect people who've served or worked or known each other for a while. They're kind of busting each other's balls and just talking general kind of shit about each other and speculating on what's going to be happening with the mission. We kind of got a good flavor and a good sense of what their individual personalities are. This is a great shot here of the interior of the ship. We can see the power loader, which is a very cool and impressive looking vehicle.
I love the production design here, just all the different elements that are coming together, and it's like incredible when they're shooting most of this on like sound stages and that you could pull that off.
It's amazing, and I'm really appreciative of these shots you've grabbed, because like looking at this here and knowing that that's like a fully constructed set makes it all the more impressive. And even the power loader, like it's not some miniature or anime, which they will use later on, like they'll have animatronic ones and that, but like that is a fully built prop with a man actually inside it, like built to scale. That's like amazing. That's incredible. And that's just something, folks, that CGI will never be able to replicate. No. And here I am thumping my anti-CGI Bible again, but you'll just never be able to get stuff that looks as real as that. I don't care how good the technology gets.
I was just thinking there's another Terminator
any day.
Another Terminator parallel here, where first movie, robot's a bad guy trying to kill you. Second movie, robot's helping you.
Yeah, definitely. And it's a nice moment we get here for Bishop's introduction, where Hudson calls him over and he's like, "Hey Bishop, do the thing with the knife, and we've might have tried this in school, maybe if you were like me and not the brightest. Maybe you do it with
just
a
with
pen
a pencil though, or a pen, not the knife."
But yeah, so we got that moment where Hudson, he originally wanted Bishop to do this, but Drake makes Hudson put his own hand on the table, and Bishop does this thing with the knife where he's like putting it through the gaps in Hudson's fingers really fast without missing and accidentally hitting his fingers, which is obviously possible to do when you've the quick reflexes of an android. You're able to pull this stuff off. So I'm not sure if it's as impressive as the rest of the crew here seem to think it is, but look, it is what it is, and you have to amuse yourself when you're in space and looking to kill a bit of time. I guess this is the type of thing that you get up to. But we see that actually Bishop did actually accidentally nick himself with the knife. So when he sits down beside Ripley, who at this point did not know that there was an android on board, she notices that he's got a bit of that kind of white milky stuff that Ash in the first film had dripping out of him. And she totally freaks out. She's like, "You never told me there was an android on board." She doesn't feel comfortable with the android. And then Burke tries to explain to Gorman and the rest of them sitting at the table that, the android on Ripley's last voyage malfunctioned, which she totally takes issue with. Yeah, because no, it didn't malfunction, motherfucker. It was programmed to do what it did. And we also get that nice little moment where Bishop explains that he prefers the term artificial person instead of android. He's obviously more comfortable being described that's his preferred way to be identified, I guess. So we quickly cut to a moment that's just generally one of my favorite moments in the movie, and that is the Marines actually preparing and being briefed on what's about to happen and what the situation is with their mission. So they're all assembled, and Ripley gives them a rundown basically of what's happened to her in the past, about how their ship stumbled across this planet, they answered the distress call, they encountered this alien creature which eventually ended up wiping out the entire crew in less than 24 hours. And she's given the Marines all this information, but in general they're all being quite dismissive of her, apart from Corporal Hicks, who seems to be paying attention to her and actually taking in what she's saying. The rest of them are all just kind of joking and chattering among themselves, and pretty much kind of dismissing her. Vazquez is like, just show me where they are. She's doing her little gun motion, like they're look, we're just like rough and tough Marines. We can deal with anything. So these concerns that you have over what happened to you already, we don't have to worry about it, because like we're armed to the teeth, and we're trained to deal with this type of thing. So you've got nothing to worry about as far as we're concerned. So we got a few more moments of the actual Marines preparing before they go on the mission, and we get a pretty good glimpse of a couple of the star weapons we're going to be seeing in this movie. So we got to see the pulse rifle, which is one of my favorite movie weapons ever. I would actually go as far as say it's like the pulse rifle and the lightsaber are probably neck and neck with me as my two favorite movie weapons. I bloody love the pulse rifle. And we also see the smart gun handled by Vazquez and Drake, which is also a pretty awesome looking gun as well. And it's all very futuristic. There's videos up on YouTube for anybody who's interested, or if you happen to have the DVD or Blu-ray sets, where they go into intricate detail about how they actually constructed the weapons for this movie. They're all actually built out of real gun components and elements.
It's like fancy bits on top of real weapons. It's the basic formula.
But yeah, the pulse rifle, such a badass weapon.
You ever play that Alien 3 arcade game that had the mounted pulse rifle? Was that like 2? That was really cool.
Awesome.
And they had the button on the side, like the grenade launcher there.
I would love to get a proper prop replica of a pulse rifle. They've always been a little bit out of my price range, and sometimes because it's with import laws about things that kind of look like weapons and stuff, it can make it awkward to get that stuff as well. But yeah, really, really, really cool weapons and technology on display here. We also get to see the APC transport roll on, and the Marines all kind of got a big pep talk from Apone. What did you think like of this whole setup, being introduced to the Marines, being introduced to the ship, the guns, all of that stuff? What did you think at the time when you first saw this?
Oh, I loved it, and I love the like you're saying, the kind of naturalistic dialogue, and to them it's just another day at work. It's like, yeah, go over here, do this, blah blah, get paid, go home. They're not expecting any kind of problems, so they're just going through the routines of like discipline routines, when they're not just busting each other's chops, like checking all the equipment, preparing things are ready, what you got to do for any kind of job. You got mechanical equipment, check everything's safe and going to be usable. If you got your ammo, do your switches and things work, and all that shit. You got to check everything, and I love it. And then you've got all them interacting with each other. They're getting ready, but all the sets and everything, it all comes together so well. And even the ATV thing, which is some kind of repurposed airport vehicle thing that they've built a body around, looks awesome.
Yeah, it looks brilliant. Yeah, I believe it was like an airport towing vehicle for like 747 jets. So it's just a big, powerful engine. Yeah, I love this whole introduction we get to everybody here pretty much, and we got to see they all kind of line up just before they go to the board the drop ship, and they actually do just look like a squad of badasses as Abe declares them to be. So we cut to the inside of the drop ship and we see Lieutenant Gorman. He's getting everything set up just before they're about to launch, and we hear some more chatter from the Marines and some back and forth, and we find out that the Lieutenant Gorman is actually quite inexperienced.
He seems like a desk jockey. I don't know. Like he just seems to not be good at making choices.
Yeah, totally. Seems like a total pencil pusher that probably shouldn't be in the field, because he admits when questioned that this is actually only his second real combat drop. The rest of the ones he's done are like simulations. So he's really like inexperienced, and that's gonna be something that's gonna come into play later on. So we get that revelation with Gorman just before we see them dropping to the planet, and they enter the atmosphere in a pretty kind of turbulent and violent way. They're getting shook about, but we do see when it's kind of panning across all the Marines, while everybody's kind of getting shook and jostled around, we see that Hicks is just asleep in his seat. So to him, like, this is nothing. Like, this is just a chance to catch a quick nap before we get to work and go to work on the job. We also get some nice banter from Hudson where he's like, "Hey Ripley, me and my squad of ultimate badasses will protect you. You know, we got nukes, knives, sharp sticks." He's just he's just having a great time.
Reminds me of the Predator helicopter scene where it's like, you know, sexual Tyrannosaurus and chew this tobacco and all that shit.
Oh, and I have to say, like, Bill Paxton, who plays Hudson, he is phenomenal in this movie. It has to be like his best role that he ever did, in my opinion. Anyway, I just think it's a fantastic role that he plays in this movie. And so yeah, we get to see the drop ship. It does a little kind of flyby of the colony. We see that it mostly seems to be kind of darkened out. There's some lights on, but not much. So they circle the area and then they land. And upon landing, the APC vehicle drives out of the drop ship, which is a really cool visual to see.
Yeah, it's awesome.
The drop ship lands, the APC rolls out, and while it's rolling out, we see the drop ship taking off again.
There's so much stuff they stole from this from other things, like Resident Evil games, pinched heaps of stuff from this. Mass Effect, the first game, just like APC dropping out of the ship.
Yeah, everything from the technology to the weaponry to even just the idea of like colonial marines or space marines. So much of this stuff has been kind of taken and adapted and ripped off, for want of a better term. Yeah, like this was a real trendsetter in that respect. But it's just so visually impressive. Like, even just looking at these stills here where they've gotten out of the APC, they're moving in towards the main building there at the Hadley's Hope colony, and they're on a set, but you would not know they're on a set. You would believe they're on this planet because it looks massive. It looks like the planet goes on forever. There's like real
great British having tea breaks just off camera. Definitely not happening.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that like there's a wall at the back there with a car park on the other side that you can't see, you know. But you will believe, and I believe, you know, I believe they were on this planet. It was as real could get, as far as I was concerned when I was looking at this at the time. And still to this day, it's one of the most visually impressive movies I've ever watched. It just looks spectacular. So they breach the main doors and they enter the complex, and they're making their way down through some dark corridors. We see as well that the Marines are also equipped with a far more advanced version of the tracker that they used in the first movie. They have like a real proper motion tracker that actually gives you can sense movement coming from like a decent distance away, and it actually gives you kind of like a proper graphical, you know, update as to the whereabouts of whatever it is that's moving towards you. So they're making their way through the corridors. They're they're not really coming across any movement or signs of life, though they do come across evidence of acid burns that have gone through the floor, which is kind of the first bit of evidence already suggesting that Ripley was telling the truth, because they literally see the hole in the floor, and Burke kind of turns to her and kind of says, "Oh yeah, you said they had acid for blood." So we're kind of getting that little indicator that they're starting to believe in what she's told them as well. So they start to pick up some movement on the motion sensor, and something runs across them in the corridor. They actually open fire at us, even though they don't know exactly what it is, but they quickly discover it's actually a little girl. It's Newt, who we saw earlier, and she's been hiding out in this complex the whole time. So first of all, Hicks tries to grab her, but she bites him on the hand and gets away. So then Ripley kind of has to chase her down through this air duct, where she finds her. She's been hiding in this kind of little box area in one of the vents, just keeping herself, I suppose, out of sight and out of mind of any aliens that would happen to be roaming the area. So Ripley takes her. She brings her back to the med bay, and they kind of begin questioning her on what happened and the whereabouts of her parents and other stuff that's been going on. We also see here, while this was happening and kind of just before they picked up Newt, they also discovered several face huggers in these kind of like containment tubes, where they're like
Yeah,
floating
like a lab.
around in some type of liquid. Yeah, it's a lab, and two of them are still alive, but the rest are dead. We actually get a nice moment where Burke goes a little bit too close to the glass, and one of the facehuggers just kind of goes up against the glass and is kind of twitching and trying to get on his face.
I'm never quite
It is
sure watching
interesting.
this whether it's someone from the colonists, where they had like science people and they've captured them and studying them, or did the company send someone out there to work, like, with these face huggers, knowing that they were there based on what Ripley told them previously?
So from what I understand, for these particular specimens, they were actually surgically removed from the faces of colonists who had been attacked. And
Right.
Bishop, I think,
Oh
notes
yeah, one of
later
the
on,
scenes
like
mentioned some people dying when they tried to separate. I remember that. But yeah.
that's right. So yeah, he said that it's written in his notes that they actually killed the colonists as a result of taking them off, which is interesting because Ash, the android in the first movie, does speculate that if they tried to remove the facehugger from Kane's face, that it could kill him as well.
Yeah.
So we kind of established now that once that fucker locks onto you, the only way he's coming off is after he's delivered his egg down your throat. If you try and pull him off before then, you're dead, essentially. So Bishop, he gets to work examining the remains of a couple of the dead facehuggers. So he's gonna busy himself with that for the next while Ripley questions and softly interrogates Newt as to what's happened. And eventually Newt fesses up that, look, her parents are dead, basically. And Ripley tries to kind of placate her, or just put her at ease, saying, look, these men that have come with me, they're here to protect you, they're soldiers. And Newt's like, won't make any difference. Won't make any difference. She knows shit's about to go down. So
bad news.
Nice little way for them to meet up with Newt, who, if you were watching the theatrical cut of this movie, this would actually be the first time you're being introduced to Newt. You wouldn't have gotten to see that extra scene where her parents actually, her father actually gets got by the facehugger, and you actually get to see her brother Timmy. Like in the theatrical cut, she mentions Timmy, but you never actually get to see him. So it's nice that they actually included the footage of him in the special edition, because I believe that little boy was also her brother in real life as well, Carrie Ann's brother. So that's pretty cool.
And if you were watching the theatrical in the cinema, this would be the first actual alien in the movie too. Whereas in the extended, you've seen a face hugger early on, so you know that there definitely are aliens there before you get there. So they're kind of right as far as building the tension the first time in the cinema. It works well not knowing what's going to happen, but for the fuller version of the film, it's much more enjoyable to see. It makes more sense.
Yeah. No, like I said earlier, the special edition footage really does enhance the viewing experience. And while I'm glad, obviously, that I did get to see the original theatrical cut, but anytime since, like if I'm ever revisiting this film these days, it would be a very rare occasion that I put on the theatrical cut. I'll nearly always opt to watch the special edition just to get the full experience.
That reminds me of the first one had a scenes too with someone being cocooned, I think, didn't it? And that which we then get
That's
see
right.
more of that in this movie.
That's right. Because I think when we reviewed Alien last time, I think we did just go with the standard theatrical cut, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm
so
not sure when I was looking at the edition of it, because it's such a minor difference in the film. It's hard to tell when I rewatch it.
Yeah. But no, this is a nice little close up of a face hugger dissection.
They made them a bit bigger, I think, in this film. Like,
yeah, they're a nasty looking creature. I love here though, and this is the type of thing that when you're actually watching this in motion and you only see it for a split second, you don't fully get a chance to appreciate just how much detail there is here. But I'm
there's
literally
a lot of real
noticing
meat in there, like gut organs and stuff in there.
I'm only noticing now for the first time ever, right? So you can see the face huggers like finger-like limbs there that are still intact, but you can also see where Bishop seems to have cut through on them, and you can actually see the bones where the off the finger, like that's
very
awesome
little
attention to
flesh.
detail.
They're just all muscle and strength, like they're incredibly strong.
It's good as well that once they die, there doesn't seem to be much of an issue with the whole acid blood thing, because they're always able to dissect them after they're dead.
Yeah, they said there's a bit where
while
Bishop
they're
goes,
still
they turn
alive.
neutral or something after they're
That's
dead.
right.
Or
Yeah, it's it neutralizes, I believe. Yeah, he does say that. You're right. You're right. But yeah, awesome bit of dissection, autopsy, whatever you like to call it there on the face hugger. So after having the chat with Newt and Hudson doing a bit of intel research, they managed to locate where the colonists are based on what's called PDTs. They're personal data transmitters. They're basically a little chip that every colonist has surgically implanted by the company so they can know their location, which is real like fucking dark corporate shit. You know, oh, we're just going to chip our employees, you know. Like works out well, obviously, in a situation like this if you need to be rescued. But day to day, I don't think I like the idea of having like a company chip inside me and them knowing my exact movements at all times. But not to dwell too much in that. So the Marines and Ripley and Burke and Newt, they make their way to the other side of the complex, and Newt, Ripley, Burke, and Gorman stay in the APC while the rest of the squad of Marines make their way into the complex towards the main cooling towers where the rest of the colonists supposedly are. And on their way, it's kind of determined as they're making their way there that it's actually Ripley who kind of points out, you know, they're in this area that's like essentially like a cooling system for a nuclear reactor. So there is a risk that if they start firing off their guns in there, they could cause a thermonuclear reaction and blow up the entire area. So Gorman has to relay the order to Apone that they will be unable to use their main weapons. So like the pulse rifles.
He doesn't tell them why. And I was kind of pissed off. I'm like, tell them why. Then they'll be more hesitant to actually do it. Because it'll blow yourself
Exactly,
up.
yeah. Doesn't bother telling them why. Just give the order. He
Just
says
say
they're only allowed to use sidearms and flamethrowers. So they're not allowed to use any of the heavier stuff. So
I'd be using my blamethrower on Gorman.
Apone gives the order and he tells Private Frost to go round and collect all the ammunition from the Marines. So it's not even good enough that they're just going to give them the order not to fire. They're actually taking their ammunition off them as well, which is pretty shitty. However, we see that Vasquez and Drake are secretly holding on to a couple of extra clips. So after Frost goes around and collects their magazines, as soon as he's walked away, Vazgaz hands Drake a spare one, and she takes out another one for herself and immediately reloads. So they don't give a shit. They're not going to follow those orders. They're keeping fully packed there as far as their weapons are concerned. We also see here that Corporal Dwayne Hicks is also well set up for this situation, because once he gives up his ammunition for the pulse rifle, he immediately pulls out a nice shotgun from his back, and he gives us the line, "I like to keep this handy for close encounters," which I always thought was a great line, and it's just awesome to see Michael Biehn with a shotgun in his hand again after the first Terminator movie. Like, it's definitely his signature weapon, so it's great to see that. So the Marines, they make their way further into the complex, and they begin to make their way into what I suppose will later be revealed as the alien hive. So they're going through these corridors that look very organic and kind of somewhat similar to the interior corridors of the derelict ship we see in the first movie.
Built over the top of the existing building.
Yes, and the walls are very slimy and organic looking.
Jelly, yeah.
And we also they stumble across a couple of eggs that have already been opened, and there's a few desiccated corpses of facehuggers that have obviously, already delivered their embryos into hosts, so they've just kind of died on the ground. And we see Hicks picking up one with the end of a shotgun and just kind of examining it in the flashlight. So they move their way yet further into the complex, and they stumble across one of the colonists, and she's been cocooned to the wall. And she wakes up and she's like, help me, and they begin to set about trying to free her, when all of a sudden she starts jerking around, and next thing, the chest burster just explodes from her body. So this is our first instance seeing a chest burster in this movie, and it looks really great. They've really improved on the design over the first movie, because you can actually see now it has moving arms and stuff.
Yeah.
And it looks like it's really trying to like rip at her torso and just crawl out of her body. So Apone, he's quick to the draw. He calls for a flamethrower and immediately burns the shit out of the little chest burster, and like burns the crap out of the whole wall, basically, where the bodies were cocooned. And this action starts to awaken the aliens, which up until this point have been laying dormant in this room. The entire squad had walked into the room without realizing that pretty much the entire walls and ceilings are kind of covered in xenomorphs.
Yeah, it's so dark, everything just looks black.
So the fire kind of stirs them into action, and they immediately start picking off the Marines one by one. And there's, we see so many moments here, like, where the xenomorph comes down behind the dock and literally just like pulls her back up into a vent. We see just guys getting got left, right, and center. Unfortunately,
out the walls and ceilings.
Yeah, Frost, who had collected all the ammunition, unfortunately had it all in the one type of backpack or bag or whatever. So when the fire hits that, it causes an explosion, which kills a few of the Marines straight off the bat. We've got all this ammo and like munitions kind of blowing out of this backpack, and the entire scene is just chaos. There's Drake and Vazgaz, they're shooting all around them. Hicks is there with his shotgun. He's like just laying into aliens. And a lot of what you see, we're seeing from the point of view of the Marines recording on their own kind of cameras that they have on their headsets. So it's really cool. It's kind of like VHS CCTV vision of what's kind of going on. And look, panic is setting in. They're getting picked off one by one. Gorman is just sitting in the APC being a useless stick and basically doing nothing. He's just sweating and panicking. So Ripley takes the initiative to actually drive the APC herself to the location where the Marines are. So look, Ripley, she springs into action and she drives the APC towards where the Marines are congregating. And as this is happening, the remaining Marines, they begin to retreat. So Still
And Ripley
alive.
does
We
rip the
have
headset and go, get out of there after Gorman does
yeah.
nothing.
So of the Marines who went in, the ones that are still alive are Hicks, Hudson, Vasgaz, and Drake. Everybody else is got. Like everybody else
Yeah,
by this point has been got already. So they're making their way
not many
back
left.
out, and they're moving towards the APC. And as they're getting closer to the APC, Drake, you know, he's kind of turning around. He's flaming xenomorphs with his flamethrower, and he doesn't see that off to the side of him, a xenomorph is actually just about to approach him. And Vasgaz, she sees this, so she lets off a shot and shoots the Xeno, but the acid spray from the Xeno covers Drake, burns his
Yeah,
face,
melts his
injures him
face real
badly,
bad.
and he loses control of the flamethrower, which causes it to kind of burn a lot of the environment around him, and it's catching fire on the APC. So Hicks, Vasgaz, Hudson, they managed to make it onto the APC, but just as they're about to close the doors, two hands come through and start pulling the door open, and a xenomorph sticks its head in. And Hicks just grabs a shotgun off the ground, sticks it right in the xenomorph's mouth. He's like, "Eat this!" and just blows its head off, which is another great moment. And it allows the creature to fall back. They're able to close the doors of the APC, and they're able to make their escape. And as they're making their escape, like Ripley, she is just tearing down through the corridors of the complex, driving this monstrosity. And she, you know, a xenomorph, it jumps down, it tries to break through the window, she hits the brakes, it goes rolling off, and she just drives over it and like just crushes it. Like
See
you
its
just
head
need
get
to see
crushed and squished.
squished, yeah, completely mashed into the ground. And she bursts the APC through the main doors and drives it out into the outside of the complex. So they're back out in the great outdoors of the planet. And Ripley, in the course of all this action, she's actually completely fucked up the APC. Like she's driving it across the rocky terrain, and Hicks is like, "Look, just stop it. You've blown the axle. You're just
Yeah,
grinding metal. The vehicle's fucked, basically." So they get out
it's gonna be fucked no
and they
matter what. 'Cause it's
radio.
not their fault.
Yeah, exactly. So look, they pull up and they radio the drop ship to come back in and get them. So we cut back to the drop ship. We see Pharaoh and Spunkmeyer. Pharaoh gets the call in, and she gives Spunkmeyer the Iggy to get up to the main cockpit so they can fly in and rescue them. So as all of this is happening, Spunkmeyer he presses the button on the elevator to go up to the cockpit, but he realizes it's covered in like slimy stuff. So he looks up just in time to see a xenomorph kind of hovering him over, and he gets got. And you know, we cut back to the cockpit of the dropship, and the door opens, and Pharaoh pilot turns around thinking she's going to see Spunkmeyer, but instead she sees a xenomorph, which attacks her instantly. This causes her to lose control of the dropship, which subsequently crash lands and hits the APC at the same time. So within a couple of seconds, they've lost their ground transport, they've lost their escape vehicle, and they're now stuck outside among the burning wreckage and just in a real shitty situation
Yeah,
in
they're
general.
stuffed.
This is the moment where Hudson gives us the great lines like, "Game over, man, game over," because they're totally fucked. Like they're totally fucked.
Yeah,
Their
got no radio,
transport's
no
gone,
backup, no nothing.
no nothing, and there's nobody on the Sulaco either. There's nobody, like no human is left on that ship to send anybody else to get them. So they're really in dire straits here. But
Seems like a bad idea. Keep like one person up there just in case.
yeah, you'd think you would have even just had an extra android on
Yeah,
board
an
just in
extra
case
android. That's
something
the
like
other
that.
because they don't need the food and they can stay awake for a long time. So
But yeah, we that whole I know I was just kind of like popping through everything that's happened there, but there's so much that happens. It's hard to even like, and I know I'm sure I've left out loads of key little moments and bits of action that happen, but so much stuff happens in the moments where the Marines are first set upon by the aliens. It's really hard to do it justice, but it's just a
carnage.
great sequence of events that gets us to where we are now.
And they're
With
completely
the crash and
overwhelmed.
dropship.
Like they're out of their element because they're used to fighting things in front of them or to the side of them, or maybe, I don't know, maybe use a sniper rifle or something in the distance. But these things are literally in the walls and above them, and they're in an enclosed space. And, you know, it's like being inside an insect hive where they move in different ways to human beings you can't predict. And it's just, you can't really fight them properly. You have to be in open space outdoors or something.
Also, like most of the squad at that point in time, they're after giving up the ammunition for their best weapons, so they're only using little pistols and thingy little. So it makes it all the more easier for the aliens to pick them off because they can't even fight them at full capacity.
Yeah,
but
and in that close quarters, the acid for blood thing is just so deadly. If you're shooting,
oh
with
yeah,
splattering everywhere.
oh yeah, and it was great, just as I mentioned earlier about Drake getting hit with that blast of the acid, which caused the fire. Like it's yeah, it just makes them a really difficult enemy to combat. That's a great shot there of the victim just before the chest burster emerges. As a kid, and maybe it was just because I was always watching, like, you know, probably a third or fourth generation VHS copy of this, I always thought that woman looked incredibly like Ripley when I was
Yeah.
a kid. So when I look at her now, she doesn't look that much like her, but just on my grainy quality copy of the movie, I always thought she looked a bit like Ripley. I don't know if that was like an intentional thing or what, but
No, everything was great. I was thinking about that earlier today, like the old Friday the 13th movies, you're watching on a CRT on a very grainy VHS, and you can't see half of what's happening. And so now getting to these like, you know, crystal clear restored sort of versions that look like the film print would have on first run before it's been, you know, run to shit and full of burn marks and holes and stuff in it. Look, you know, you get to see the actual film and it looks amazing.
nice little GUI display here for the remote sentry weapons, which we shall be seeing later on. Another moment that was added for the special edition. So you know, anybody who's watched our show now, we love it here, don't we? We love seeing these type of graphics on screen. These computers, you know, simple but you know, usable and effective. So yeah, we see the aftermath here of the crashed dropship, and Ripley and Newt are kind of looking out over the horizon of the planet while everybody else is kind of freaking out in the background. And Newt's like, "It'll be dark soon, and they mostly come at night, mostly." So we get that iconic line from Newt just before they make it back into the complex. So we see that they're getting set up, they're reestablished. I should note, by the way, when all this chaos was going on, Lieutenant Gorman got hit on the head. Something fell off like a shelf in the APC and like knocked him out. So at the moment he's just on a stretcher doing nothing, which is probably the best thing for him to do because he's absolutely useless.
Yeah, it is useless.
But we see here that Hicks and the rest of the Marines, they're going through what they were able to salvage from the APC wreckage, and they've managed to get ammunition back for their pulse rifles. They do have limited ammunition. They have some grenades. However, they have also managed to salvage 2 remote sentry guns. So their plan basically is, in the short term, to barricade themselves into the area that they're currently occupying and use the remote sentry guns in the corridors to kind of automatically pick off any aliens that will try and make their way
and
down
they block off
towards their position.
maintenance tunnels and other things that lead up to that area.
Yeah, we got lots of great scenes of preparation where they're kind of like welding doors shut and just trying to really block off any entrances or any way that the aliens can possibly get into their side of the complex.
Like Night of the Living Dead sort of thing. It was like, now we're in this enclosed space and we've got to try and stop any other way to get in here.
You also one thing I'll say about this film is the situation always escalates pretty much from worse to even more worse as we progress through, because So they're after losing their transport, and Ripley, she's asking Hicks a lot of questions, because obviously Hicks, based on the fact that Lieutenant Gorman's been knocked out, that Sergeant Apone is dead, like Hicks is actually now next in line as kind of in the chain of command, so he's kind of taking charge here. And Ripley kind of she flat out asks him, like, how long till we are declared overdue that we could expect a rescue? And Hicks is like 17 days. And Hudson turns around, he's like, 17 days? We ain't gonna last 17 hours. And you'd just be like, what the fuck? 17 days? Like, that's crazy. But to make things even worse on top of that, Bishop informs them that the thermonuclear powered atmosphere processor, it actually hasn't been running properly, and there's
It's
been
not
issues with
venting
it
properly, so
actually.
it's building up
It's not venting properly, it's not cooling, and it's
and damaged.
it's going to blow up. It's going to blow up, and they have a very limited time to actually get out of there before the whole place becomes like a crater. So Bishop suggests that if he can remotely link to their mothership, the Sulaco, that's in the atmosphere, he can bring down the spare dropship that they have there by remote, and they'll be able to get off planet. But in order to do this, he has to make his way to an area of the complex where they can actually kind of set up this like remote communication with the ship. So Bishop is tasked with having to crawl through this like air shaft to get to where he needs to get. And I'm telling you, man, still to this day, anytime I watch him crawl inside that like tube and
That
make
scared
his
me as
way
a
down,
kid, man. Just that
oh
so
man, I don't like it at
claustrophobic.
all. It's so claustrophobic, and it just looks
And
so
and
uncomfortable.
the movement he does is actually very realistic. When he used to go like jiu-jitsu and stuff, you do all different positions, getting up and down on the ground. I've done that on the ground, just like wriggling just your shoulders and your fingers. It's a very realistic move to actually do that. And in the military stuff, they get you to like crawl and do all sorts of weird things and climb up and under things and over things. But man, it was such a scary scene. Even never mind if the alien comes, but just it being in that confined space and it's so claustrophobic and dark, it's just horrendous.
You get the impression that the actual humans would have been totally unsuitable to be able to do that. Like, at least Bishop is
Yeah,
an
no, they couldn't have
android,
done
so
it.
he could run.
Well,
Yeah,
you get
you totally
fatigued as
freak
a
out.
thing. If you actually do that movement, after about a minute, you're stuffed. Your muscles are just
Yeah.
fatigued as hell.
So Bishop, he's sent on his way down the shaft to get this uplink set up. And while this is going on, we got a few interesting moments here. So first of all, we see that the remote sentry guns, they have actually already been activated, and there is still some shooting going on in the corridors. Just in case, I'm not sure if they are in any of your shots, but that's roughly, it's probably a bit reflecting the light here.
I can see that.
Yeah, that's what the remote sentry guns actually look like. I think there's there's an actual picture on the back of what they would
There you
look
go.
like.
Yeah, apparently they were real guns that they just like modified a bit on the outside to make them look like, space military. And they said they shot out blanks, but the blanks were like wood chips or something like that. So it's still dangerous if you go near them.
Oh yeah. And they're really pissing through their ammo here, because the xenomorphs are relentless. They just keep
like
on coming
500
down the
rounds and they're
corridors.
just chewing through it.
So Hicks, he's monitoring the ammo situation with the sentry guns, and he basically, while this is going on, he gives the orders to Vasquez and Hudson that they're just to control the perimeter, to stay frosty and alert, and to make sure that no aliens get into the area that they're in. And he also takes a bit of time to have a chat with Ripley, and we got a nice little moment between the two. We do definitely get a sense that there could be potential for like a budding romance, because Hicks, he's explaining to her what the pulse rifle is, how it works, gives her a brief demonstration of how to basically how to use the weapon, and shows her how to cock the grenade launcher and do all that useful stuff that you'd need to do if it ever comes down to it. But Ripley, she what can I say? She takes to the pulse rifle pretty well, and she even, she puts Hicks at ease by letting them know that she can handle herself, but she kind of knows already, because he's been paying close attention to her pretty much the whole film. Like anytime we've kind of seen him, he's been, even earlier on when she was given the briefing on the ship before they went down to the planet, he was the only one who seemed to really pay attention to what was being said and
Yeah,
what was being told.
professional.
So he's um as well as probably having a soft spot for her, he's definitely got a bit of respect for her as well. So she puts him at ease, and she's quite happy to take the pulse rifle.
Yeah, when
And
the shit hits a fan, she's the one you want to rely on.
yeah, she makes her way down to the med bay, and she'd already kind of pushed Newt. She'd left Newt there earlier just to have a little nap, and
It's a real kind of
when she
family
goes
moment
back
too,
in,
because you got like she's like the mother, there's like the substitute parents for like Newt, who's lost their parents and that. So we get this kind of sweet family, almost family kind of moment in a movie that's action and horror.
it's really nice because yeah, we'd seen earlier on she'd kind of put Newt in a bed and tucked her in, but when she goes back into the room, she realizes that Newt's actually sleeping underneath the bed because she's obviously just afraid and of everything that's
Mm.
going on, and she's ill at ease. So yeah, we got this nice moment where Ripley, she lays her pulse rifle down on top of the bed, and she actually scoots herself underneath with where Newt is, and she just kind of spoons her and gives her a wee cuddle and a hug, and kind of falls asleep beside her. So it's a nice little moment there. And we cut back to the outside of the complex, and we see this Bishop has successfully made his way to the uplink tower, and he's in the process of connecting with the Nostromo, or sorry, not the Nostromo, the Sulaco,
Yeah.
and
Either that or
activating
he's doing
the
a disco DJ light party or something to that effect.
yeah, doing a bit of DJing in the storm. He's just going to
Lovely
call the
cool
ship
blue
down and
lighting.
just he's just going to escape by himself. He's got a face hugger in a suitcase, and he's just going to get the hell out of there. But so yeah, we see him. He's connecting with the uplink, and we cut back to the room where Newt and Ripley are asleep. And Ripley wakes up and she looks across and she notices that the containment kind of jars that the two live face huggers were in earlier have been knocked over, and they
Yeah.
are empty. And she starts dunging it as anybody would, and she reaches up to grab her pulse rifle, which she left on the bed, but the pulse rifle is gone. It ain't there, Chief. So straight away, Facehugger leaps from across the room, leaps on top of the bed, tries to do the whole thing that Facehuggers do. Ripley's able to get Newt out of there and kind of flip the bed over to
Yeah,
escape.
she kind of jams it against the wall between the bed and the wall and the bed at first, like to give them a chance to move away.
And this is a really, really intense scene. So first of all, we see that Ripley, she's running up to the security cameras. She's trying to get their attention, and it cuts to the security room where Burke is actually watching her on the monitor, and he just switches off the screen
Such
so
a
nobody else
cold
can see.
prick. Let's just
Yeah, what a
look over
scumbag!
here.
What
Don't
an
nobody
absolute
else look.
scumbag!
I'm just doing this.
I suppose before we actually get into the meat of what's about to happen here, I should probably backtrack just a little bit and explain because we forgot to mention it. It had been established moments earlier that Ripley had actually gone reading through the company logs, and she realized that Newt's family had not been randomly just sent out to that ship. They were sent out to that ship on the orders of
Uh,
Burke, who had
yeah,
given orders for them to be sent. So he knew the danger that he was sending them into. Now he tries to deny it. He tries to say that look, he only sent them out there to try and prove or disprove what Ripley was saying. He just tries to, as Ripley would say, sleaze his way out of it.
yeah. He's such a
But
two-faced company stooge who's got no balls. And he's just a weasel at every opportunity. And I think Paul Reiser does a good job of it because used to him being funny guy, nice guy, and he plays the face of that, but underneath he's just a complete weasel.
oh, he's a total scumbag. And Ripley lets him know as much as well. And she's like, look, you sent them to their deaths, and you're the one who's actually caused all of this. And if we get out of this, I'm going to report you for what you've done, and you're going to be like nailed to the wall for doing what you've done. So this is the reasoning behind Burke actually pretty much trying to get Ripley killed.
Because
So
he
he's
wants to
taken
get
her pulse
samples of the
rifle.
aliens inside them that he can smuggle out of there. He doesn't give a crap
Exactly.
about anyone alive or dead.
Yeah, he's a total piece of shit. So we, as I mentioned there, he switched off the security monitor so nobody could actually see what was going on in that room. Ripley and Noosh, they're still stuck in there. Ripley, who is very quick thinking, is able to set off the fire alarm by holding her lighter close to the
And they tried to
the
smash the window,
sprinkler
but it was
system.
too strong and shatterproof, and they couldn't get through it.
Yeah, we got it. We got a grad. It's one of those. It's so tense because obviously before you realize it's a shatterproof window, nearly everybody who watches this movie is screaming at the screen, going, "Break the window! Break the window!" So when she starts hitting it with the chair and nothing happens, you're like, "Oh shit! What are you going to do now?" And so she sets off the fire alarm. The sprinkler system starts going off, and her and Noose, they're kind of hunkered near the doorway. She's just like, "Okay, look, we're just going to wait. Somebody's going to come." But as she's standing there, the camera pans up slightly, and we see there's a facehugger that's been going along the ceiling, and it just drops down and just kind of clings onto her. So she throws it, she flings it off her, and in a great piece of visual and animatronic effects, we get to see the facehugger running across the floor and leaping over some knocked over stuff and like trying to attach itself to Ripley's face, and it's an amazing looking sequence of events. The effects are brilliant. We also see at the same time that Ripley is struggling with one facehugger, another one is beginning to sneak up behind Noose, and she is quick enough to actually push the table that it's on into the wall, so it traps its tail, and she's able to just keep pressure on it, so it's not able to pull itself away and together. And as all of this is going on, the rest of the Marines show up. Hicks gives the orders to
I
shoot
love
in
this
the
bit. He's like,
window.
shoot it. And he does an awesome Komodo dive roll through the window to smash it. So good.
Brilliant. Yeah, he smashes through that fucking window, and he gets over to Ripley. He grabs at the face hugger. He's able to get it off her before it attaches to her face. And so he's got it. He's there. He's calling Vasquez over. He's like, so he's going to throw it, and she has to shoot it. So he just flings it across the room, and she just blasts the piss out of it when it hits the other side. And in the meantime, Hudson has ran over to where Noose is, and he pretty much unloads this entire magazine into one facehugger. He just completely blitzes it. He's obviously beginning to feel the pressure himself as to
And it
everything
shows how
that's going
strong the
on.
little bastards are when there's like three people trying to get one to get it off of Ripley.
Yeah, they're scary. I think, don't get me wrong, like in the first movie, the idea of the facehugger was pretty scary, but in this movie, actually seeing how they move and seeing how fast they move, they are a terrifying creature. Like there's something that you would completely shit yourself if you were caught in a room with one. I don't know what the fuck I'd do if I was caught in a room with one of those fuckers.
Hope get some liquid nitrogen if you've got some. Look, to get the term that.
I suppose what I do is I become a mummy to a new life form. That's all I could fucking do.
Actually, they did. I don't know if it would work. I don't know how the facehuggers go. I think as far as the alien warriors, they sense motion, and I think from the comics they would smell you, your like odors and whatever to know you're there, that you're prey. But I don't know if the facehuggers can they smell you, or do they go off motion, or because I'm sure their vision would be shit, like the size of them and all that.
Yeah,
So
I'm
I don't know
guessing
if you
it's
were
all
colder or
spirits.
something. If you lowered your body temperature or covered in mud like Predator style, would that do anything or nothing? I don't know. I don't know if there's anything that can mask the stop whatever their main sensors are. They have to be something.
Yeah, because that's the thing about, I suppose, all the creatures in the Alien and Aliens universe that we see, like from the Xenomorph family, they don't actually have eyes. So yeah, it's you assume it's all kind of motion based detection, or like maybe the way like a
We
bat
know
uses sonar or
we know the
whatever.
alien warriors are like fairly intelligent, and we don't know how intelligent. But they could be nearly as intelligent as fucking human beings, or at least as like I don't know, gorillas or something, like because they're pretty smart.
Yeah, yeah. So we see in the aftermath of this whole facehugger incident, they get to Burke and they begin interrogating him. And Ripley starts filling in the blanks as to what his plan was as regards to He wanted to get her and Newt impregnated by facehuggers. He would then get them back on board Sulaco, and he would sabotage. Yeah, he'd sabotage the sleep chambers for the Marines so they would not make it back, and he'd be able to make it back with his specimens. So he was a
And he
pretty
can make up
sleazy
whatever
piece of
story he
shit.
wants with no one to contradict it.
And this obviously enrages everybody. Hicks pretty much just grabs him by the scruff, and he's like, "Look, I'm going to waste you now. No offense." But just as he's
I
about
really want to kill him earlier. Now they like really want to fucking execute you right now.
So just before though he's about to do him in, all of a sudden the lights go out, the emergency red lighting turns on, and it turns out the xenomorphs, they've somehow managed to cut the power, which goes back to what you're saying about how intelligent they actually are.
We don't know. They just assume they're like animals, but we don't actually know because they haven't really encountered them. As far as this is the first thing before all the comics and other movies. And
so we're in the red light zone now. The emergency lighting is on, and so orders to Mazgaz and Hudson to go out and check perimeter. He also turns around to Gorman, who's totally been emasculated at this point to being a useless bastard, and he just pretty much yeah, like, you watch Burke, that's your job, you watch Burke,
he's like concussed, and then he wakes up and he's like, what's going on?
So they're looking at the motion sensor, and they're seeing that there is a massive horde of xenomorphs moving in on their location. So Hicks calls Hudson and Bazgaz back, and they begin sealing the door to the room that they're in at the moment, and preparing for this onslaught of aliens to come bursting through. But as they back up and they ready themselves, when they look at the motion sensor, they see that it's showing that the aliens should actually already be inside the room, but there's been no breach on the door. So
there's no visual.
They come to the conclusion that they must be coming from above. So Hicks decides to test this theory by hopping up on a wee test ladder, or a wee step ladder, and pushing up one of the grates with his gun and looking up with a flashlight. And
look up there.
A brave man, a very brave man. But we get
because they could have got him right there.
What a visual though of all the xenomorphs crawling on top of each other and crawling along the ceilings. Like, it's such an amazing visual. Like
it's great.
It just flooded with them.
Strength of the way James Cameron purposely made it different in the first film. He went like they're coming out of the walls, the ceiling. They're in this confined space and they're crawling. So you're not thinking of any human in a suit. You're just seeing this bug-like weird movement, them crawling along.
It just looks phenomenal. So Hicks, he falls down. He starts opening fire just as they all start breaking through.
And the ceiling collapses.
And all hell breaks loose as that suspended ceiling comes down, and everybody just starts opening fire. And while everybody's kind of distracted, Burke does a legger. He starts running down the corridor, and Ripley goes to go after him, but he closes the door behind her and locks it because he's a piece of shit. So we cut back to the interior of the room, and I just love this whole action sequence that's going on. Everybody's opening fire. They're blowing the piss out of xenomorphs left, right, and center. Hudson is starting to get kind of really cocky, and he's just like, come on, come get me. And he's like opening fire, but just as he's kind of in the throes of it, the floor opens up beneath him, and he's pulled down into the floor and it's a really just nasty moment where he's still shooting and trying to fight, and Hicks runs over to try and grab him, but just as he grabs him, we just see that big alien hand coming across Hudson's face and like pulling him back down into the grate. So it's poor Hudson goes bye, and Hicks looks up just in time to blow the shit out of a xenomorph that was coming up on him. So the situation is dire. They're down another man. They move into to another section where just before Burke had been, but we see that Burke, as he was trying to sleaze his way out of there, he actually runs into a xenomorph in the corridor that gets him. So that slimy little piece of shit has gotten his comeuppance, finally as well. So the Newt, Ripley, and the remaining Marines, so we're down to Hicks, Vazquez, and Gorman now. They conclude that the best way to make their way to the dropship site is to make their way through this like air shaft, which once again, very, very claustrophobic. And even though there's a little bit more room for them to move around, they have to like crouch down and like run with their guns.
Yeah, it's quite
While we
small, and there's
see,
a bit of visual trickery where it, as they go, it somehow gets a bit bigger. You can tell that's just like so they could actually film the scene, but you don't be pay like too close attention to it. But it's still very
see as
cramped.
well, the aliens move through the vents with so much ease. They just have all their
Yeah, they
limbs
just
and they're
crawl
just like
along like
flying down. So
insects or lizards.
you know, Vazquez, she's kind of at the back end of the crew and she's just unloading on everything that's coming down the shaft towards them. But eventually her pulse rifle, it runs dry. She runs out of ammo. So she pulls out her pistol and starts making her way down through the air shaft. But just as she's just as she's making her way around the bend, a xenomorph drops down from above and she has to shoot it at close range. So she pretty much unloads her whole pistol clip into its head, but obviously acid for blood, it sprays out and completely like
Just
drenches her
falls
leg.
on its head.
Yeah, it busts like she gets her whole like foot, leg, ankle just burned through with the acid. So she's pretty bad.
Yeah, it's nasty.
Great shot there for blowing the piss out of the xenomorph.
I just love it. Just the desperation of like you're in this confined space and just jams a boot into it just point blank. She's gonna get the acid, but at least she kills the bastard.
So Gorman runs back to get her and he starts trying to like pull her up, but just as he's pulling her up from the other side, a vent gets broken through and another xenomorph emerges. So they're now cornered. There's xenomorphs coming from both sides. So Gorman, he does the first and only good thing he does in the whole movie. He takes a grenade out of his pocket. He arms it. Vazquez gives us the great line just before they die. He's like, "You were always an asshole, Gorman." just before just before he blows both of them up. And look, they sacrificed their lives, but they killed a couple of xenomorphs in the shaft. But
And then buy
unfortunately,
some time for the other folks.
the explosion, it does unfortunately cause Newt to slip and fall down an air shaft herself as they're trying to get across this kind of weird like turny wheel thing. So now she's been separated from the group. Now
It's this
Ripley,
masterful
she
tension. It's like real Hitchcock sort of tension that just keeps like what's gonna happen, you know.
oh, it's unbelievable. So like Ripley, she's like, "Come on, Hicks, we have to go get her." So she's got news earlier had been given a little location tracking device by Ripley, who'd gotten it off Hicks earlier as well. So they're able to track Newt's whereabouts, and they make their way down the corridors searching for her. And we see that Newt has actually fallen into this kind of pretty much submerged. It's almost like a sewer-like system
Yeah.
she's ended up in, and she's wandering around. She's waiting for Hicks and Ripley to get to her. They manage to find her and they begin cutting through the floor to try and
Yeah,
get
he's
to
got like
her.
a pocket welder thing to cut through the middle.
But unfortunately for them, as they are cutting through, a xenomorph emerges from beneath the water and takes Newt. So by the time they kick in the floor to see where she is, all we see is her little plastic dolly head floating in the
I
water.
love this.
So
I love this bit
she's
here
been
where they get
taken.
through and they've just missed her, and like Sigourney Weaver, she's like, "No," she's like, "You get to
Yeah,
live. They don't take you," and
you
it's
really
like
feel it.
all the horror of the first movie and the fact that her daughter died while she was in space is all just kind of in that moment, you know, with the surrogate daughter. It's so good.
And she's freaking out and she's like turning to Hicks and she's like, "They don't kill you, Hicks. They don't kill you. They've taken her. She's still alive." And he's like, "Look, I believe you. She is still alive, but we have to get the fuck out of here." So
We're gonna blow up.
he drags her down the corridor and they get into the elevator, goes to hit the button on the elevator, nothing happens. He starts tapping it again, and just as he's tapping it, a xenomorph comes through and Hicks opens fire at very close range with his pulse rifle, and he gets fucking drenched in acid, like gets him on the whole chest, upper body, gets him on his face, around his eye, like really does a fucking number on him.
That's where I fell asleep for a
And
bit when I was watching today, and I missed that scene.
yeah, it's it fucks him up, but like so Ripley has to help him out of the elevator as they make their way towards the dropship. He's pretty badly injured. But they both get into the dropship, and Bishop's like, okay, the place is going to blow in like the next 20 minutes or so, so let's go. And she's like, no, we're not leaving. I'm going back in there, and I'm going to get Newt. And
this is the real John Rambo moment where she like suits up with all the equipment, and she doesn't get one big gun, she gets another big gun and duct tapes them together, which I love. I just love it.
Beautiful. She duct tapes a flamethrower to a pulse
to the
rifle.
and with the one big
tons
scratch,
of,
you can have both together. It's good.
Tons of ammo, tons of grenades with her. Like, she is really stocking up. And just before she goes to make her way off the dropship to go back to get Newt, she turns to Hicks, who we see is kind of holding the patch to his head because he's been injured. And we get a nice moment between the two of them where she's like, okay, I'll see you, Hicks. And he's like, oh, Dwayne. My name is Dwayne. And then she tells him that her name is Ellen. Because up until this point, they've only been going by second names. It's like Ripley and Hicks. It's, you know, so we get a nice little exchange between the two of them here where they tell each other their first names. And Hicks is like, don't be gone long, Ellen. And she heads off, and she's armed, and she begins making her way back into the complex, and she's using the same tracking device that she used to locate Newt earlier. She's going to find out where she is and hopefully rescue her. And the whole time while this is happening, the complex is beginning to break down because the nuclear reactor is failing. There's explosions going off. There's just pipes bursting. The whole building and the whole complex is just going into meltdown. So the time pressure is really on here. So Ripley, as she's making her way through the corridors, we cut to Newt, who has been cocooned to the wall. She's trapped, and a face hugger egg is just beginning to open. So Newt does what any little girl would do in this situation, and as she's done several times in this movie, she just starts screaming as loud as she can.
Which works out well as far as locating.
Thankfully, it works out well because Ripley, she's able to locate her. She gets there just in time. She blows the shit out of the egg and the facehugger and kills a couple of more xenomorph drones that were just kind of guarding the area. And she begins ripping all that rotten kind of organic material off Newt so she can separate her from the wall that she's cocooned to. And they begin to make their way out of there. But unfortunately, they stumble into a large room, and they kind of freeze because they realize it's an egg chamber. They're just surrounded by facehugger eggs. And as we're kind of soaking all this in, Ripley slowly looks up and sees that there's a big egg sack that's laying these eggs, and attached to this egg sack is the alien queen, who we are seeing now
Very
for
happy
the
to
first
see her.
time in all her glory. And my God, what a creature, and what a creature design, and what a special effect. I bloody love the alien queen. She is
Well,
a
I don't think we
sexy
see
bitch.
something this big again as far as practical effects, and pretty much until the first Jurassic Park, I think. As far as like,
Yeah,
but even that's not as big as this. It's like because it's like full size, full size, crazy
yeah,
puppet.
she is massive. She is massive, and she looks a lot like the xenomorph in general is a pretty menacing creature design. But when we actually see the queen and we see her with her giant head crest, she has like multiple arms. She is just one badass looking bitch, and a phenomenal creature design.
It's like a
Just
mix of sort of praying mantis and an ant, like kind of mixed together, like all spindly
yeah, and it
limbs in it.
blows my mind every time I see it. Still looks fantastic. And Ripley and Noose, they're in a pretty dire situation here because we kind of see the Queen giving this. The Queen does a lot of these kind of subtle head nods to her drones to encourage them to come in. So we see there is intelligence at play here, and she's obviously able to give them orders to attack and whatnot. But as they begin approaching her, Ripley lets loose with the flamethrower and burns a couple of eggs. And then she holds the flamethrower to another egg and more or less, gives the Queen the Iggy, look, I'll set your whole brood on fire unless you let me leave. So once again, we see the Queen kind of signal over to her drones to back off. And which shows more intelligence and kind of reasoning capability that the Queen is able to actually negotiate in a way to stop her own species from being harmed. So Ripley begins to slowly back out of the chamber with Newt, but as they're backing out, one of the eggs beside them just opens. So Ripley just goes, you know what, fuck it, and she just starts letting rip. She flames the whole place down, and then she also starts letting rip with her pulse rifle. She kills the drones that are in the chamber. She also lets loose a shitload of grenades that blow up the Queen's egg
that's
sac and also blows up
everywhere.
a bunch of the eggs. All very nasty and slimy looking this whole time. All this shit's like exploding everywhere, and yeah, it's a real sense of satisfaction when Ripley launches a couple of grenades into that big egg sac and it just blows a load of holes in it.
Payback time.
So Ripley and Newt, they leg it out of there, and the place is on fire. And we see that the Queen, she's going crazy and she's like flailing her arms about, but she manages to actually detach herself from her egg sac, which kind of looks painful. You can see it's really like tugging, and she has to kind of like rip it off in order to escape. So the Queen begins stalking Newt and Ripley down the corridor as they're making their way to the dropship pickup. And Ripley, she gets wind that the Queen is tracking them or stalking them, so her and Newt are able to get onto an elevator just in time and let out a few spurts from the flamethrower just for the alien Queen to back off and to give them time for the elevator door to close. But then we see that as they're ascending up to the platform, another elevator arrives and the door opens, and the alien Queen once again is intelligent enough to know that she can board this elevator and follow them up that way. And so we get to the top of the platform. Ripley and Newt get out of the elevator, and there's no fucking dropship. The dropship is not there. Ripley's like, Bishop, god damn you. And just as she says this, the other elevator door opens behind her, and out steps the alien Queen, and she is angry. She wants revenge on Ripley for destroying her hive. Ripley looks at her ammo counter. She's got 0 bullets in the pulse rifle, no grenades, no juice left in the flamethrower. So she just throws the weapon down. She picks up Newt in her arms, and she just says, "Close your eyes, baby," because she thinks they're going to get got there and then. But just at the last moment, the dropship appears behind them. The door opens. We see that Bishop is piloting it. They're both able to climb onto the steps and get into the dropship and escape just in time as the entire complex explodes in a little mini thermonuclear explosion. So it wipes out the colony. As far as we're aware, colony has gone bye-bye. So we cut back to the deck of the Sulaco. The dropship has landed, and we see Hicks. He's kind of getting all bandaged up, and Bishop's explaining, like, you look, he's been tranquilized. We're just going to kind of get him into his cryopod, and he'll be able to get some medical attention when we get back to
sense of relief for just a minute or so.
Yeah, there's a nice moment of calm, and Bishop's explaining to Ripley. He's like, "Look, I hated that I had to leave you there, but the platform was becoming too unstable, and I didn't think it was going to hold the weight of the ship, so that's why I had to go and circle around and then come back for you." And Ripley, for the first time, she's like, "Look, Bishop, you did okay," and she actually finally seemed to have thawed towards him and like him. And just as we have this nice little moment, all of a sudden Bishop's just like, "Grr!" And next thing we see,
become mates with Ripley, you die soon afterwards.
Yeah, he gets skewered by the alien Queen's tail, and it's actually a really nice moment because when you see this for the first time, the way they shoot it, it actually looks like he's got a chest burster coming out of him.
Yeah.
And like the first time you watched, you're like, "What the fuck? Did the android get impregnated somehow? Like, what's going on?" But it's only after a few seconds you realize it's like, "Oh no, that's a tail," and he's actually been lifted up and being brought towards the alien queen, who's actually stowed away among the landing gear. She was actually able to board the drop ship before the
Yeah.
platform had
Passenger
exploded.
57 style.
So the queen, she drags Bishop up to him, and she literally grabs him one side each and just rips him
Yeah,
in
it's
half,
rips them
like just
off.
tears him right in half.
Amazing
Brilliant
effects, like
visuals.
I was flying away.
It's so
All the
good.
guts
It's so
coming out.
good. And we see actually Bishop hit the ground, and we get to see his half severed corpse kind of writhing around and crawling and trying to pull himself around the place. So Ripley's freaking out. She tells Newt to run. The alien queen starts chasing after Ripley, but she's able to make it behind the big blast door and shut the door. Meanwhile, Newt crawls under some grating to try and hide from the alien queen. So the alien queen, she's walking around, she's stalking after Newt, she's pulling up different sections of the flooring, trying to reach in and grab Newt together. And just as we think she's about to get Newt, the door behind her opens and out steps Ripley in the power loader, and she gives us the iconic line, "Get away from her, you bitch." And the
And the
queen,
awesome
she's not
framing
happy
of
to
the
see her.
car loader with the light behind it, where she steps in. It's
So
so
good.
good.
It is so good. And we get this epic battle now between the alien queen and Ripley in the power loader. And once again, the visual effects and practical effects at work here are just phenomenal. They're really just
You ever
excellent.
played that
And
old Konami arcade game?
yes,
Like
brilliant,
not the
brilliant
AVP,
game.
but the one before that. And the in boss battle, you actually get to be in the power loader and actually beat up the queen and chuck her out the bin.
Yeah, it's extremely satisfying
Yeah,
to be able to do that. But yeah, she her and the queen get in a big fight, and she's able to grab the queen by the neck, and the queen gets she is kind of getting the shit beat out of her, but she's giving it as good as she's getting it because she's like whipping the
yeah.
side of the power loader with her tail and trying to reach through the gaps in it to get to Ripley's
Such an
face.
amazing scene. They're kind of circling each other like boxers and smashing and slapping it around. And
Ripley, at one point she uses the power loader fork to kind of grab the queen by the neck, but the queen is like trying to do the inner mouth thing to reach in and
yeah,
get her.
extended mouth.
It's really really tense, and
And it's so
look,
dangerous
I'm
because the
going.
tail could come through any time in between those struts and could just like cut her head off or stick her in
Oh,
the middle
big
like
time.
Bishop.
He's able to
And the
he's
power
able
loader's
to
so
keep kind of
slow, whereas the
dodging
queen's
the
so fast.
yeah, and it's really you get the feeling it's only a matter of time before the queen's going to be able to dodge something and just
Yeah,
get in close enough to her to kill her. But luckily for Ripley, she's able to activate the airlock doors. She actually has a control pad on the power loader that's able to open the first set of doors to the airlock, and she lifts the queen with the power loader and tries to actually drop her down the shaft. However, the queen actually grips on to the power loader and pulls the whole mechanism down with her. So now we have this moment where Ripley, she's still in the power loader. The power loader's laying on top of the queen, and she's kind of at the bottom of this shaft. She needs to get the hell out of there. So she starts climbing the ladder, and she's making her way up. She gets a good bit of the way up before one of the queen's arms reaches out and grabs her by the foot and begins to start pulling her down. So Ripley, in an act of pure desperation, she pulls the lever to open the airlock. And of course, when you open a fucking airlock in space and in one of these movies, all the shit that can't happen does happen, and everything's getting sucked out. The
yeah. So
power
normally
loader
it would
gets
seal
sucked out
off
into
the
space.
secondary door, but here it's just straight vacuum and it's getting sucked out.
Yes, because I'm sure, look, her original plan was, I'm going to drop this bitch in the airlock, then I'm going to get out and just push that door to open to suck her out. She
Hmm.
didn't realize she was going to be down in the shaft with her. So she's clinging on to the ladder. The alien queen is still hanging on to her leg, but Ripley manages to give it one last kind of go and just shake her off. The queen lets go. She's blasted off out into space. It's the only The only minor complaint I will ever give this movie is the little bit of visual effects that they use for. They showed. I don't even know why they feel the need to do this, but for some reason they showed a queen struggling in space outside of the
Yeah.
ship, and I always kind of thought it just didn't look as. I'm not saying it's an awful special effect, but it's definitely not to the standard of everything else we've seen so
They just
far.
could
It's
have not shown
probably
that bit.
yeah, they just didn't need to show it. They just didn't need to show it, and it's the I will go on the record as saying that I believe it's the only effect in the film that has dated itself. It's the only thing that looks like it has aged a little bit poorly. So that's my minor little negative quirk with the movie. But okay, so the Queen, she's blown out the airlock. Ripley manages to pull herself up and hit the button to shut the door. So she's back inside. She's safe. The Queen is gone. She gives Newt a big hug. She looks at Bishop, who's on the floor and chopped in half, and he's like, "Not bad for a human," with loads of milk hissing out of his mouth. And so the final moments of the movie, we see Hicks, who's still all bandaged up from his acid burns, and who, luckily for him, was tranked up the whole time the Queen was wreaking havoc on the ship. Um, he gets going to sleep in his cryopod. We also see that Bishop, who's been severed in half, is also pushed inside a cryopod, and they're going to go sleepy sleep for a little while. And we get to see this final moment between Newt and Ripley, and Newt's asking, are we going to get to sleep the whole way home? And Ripley's like, yeah, we're going to get to sleep the whole way home. And we get a nice moment where the kind of final camera shot of the movie is both of them asleep. They're in pods. They're kind of parallel to each other, and we can see Ripley's kind of looking in over Newt's shoulder in her pod while they both drift off into cryo sleep. And finally, they've made their escape, and all will be well. I'm definitely sure that everything's going to be fine. They're definitely not going to open up the next film with Hicks and Newt being killed. That's not going to happen. Everything's okay.
You're not
They
going to
all live
not pay
happily ever
royalties
after.
properly for people's likenesses or anything like that.
Yeah, but yeah, that's a great shot there of the Queen with the power loader on top of it. The struggle is real. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, it
Just
amazes me
amazing.
that they have this gigantic puppet. There's a whole team of people keeping this thing moving and going, and robotics and hydraulics and whatever. And you got like puppetry stuff, and then building small, big size parts and things and shots, all that stuff coming together, and then the wizardry of having Ripley fighting in the power loader. And we're seeing around them in 360. We can't see wires. We can't see the effects team or people just off to the side doing the puppetry. It's amazing. They're all smoke and mirrors to hide all that stuff in the film. Like it's just the finished product is so polished. Like so many lesser films, you would have been seeing shots of people's hands popping up or cables or something.
Yeah, well, James Cameron, he is a perfectionist, and he really did as
Wouldn't have
close
been
as
easy
you
to
get.
do. I think they would have struggled shooting that scene. It must have taken a lot, I think, to get that right.
Oh yeah, yeah. And look at the effort though, it pays off. We got just an amazing looking scene, and like pretty much everything else in the movie, it's the attention to detail, it's the strong quality of the visual effects. It just makes the difference. It makes the difference between something that would have just been a cheap B movie fucking space sequel to something that's just an amazing piece of work. And like I said earlier at the very, very beginning, like easily one of my favorite movies ever, easily one of the best sequels ever.
So
I just
rewatchable.
love it. So rewatchable, man. I've watched this so many times, like you wouldn't believe. Like it was like a regular childhood favorite of mine. It just got watched repeatedly. I just adored it, and still do adore it to this very day. And it set me up as a lifelong Aliens fan. And I do obviously complain a lot about the later sequels and stuff, but a lot of the media that came about as a result of this film, like the Dark Horse comics, the video games, I love it all. I soak all that stuff up. The universe that Aliens created for me, especially in my
Yeah.
childhood, was second to none, and I'll always be grateful to it for that.
Yeah, I really
Love
enjoy
it.
comics and other games and stuff that came out of it too. I mean, the first two films are still, like, to me, just the best things that set it up. But some of the other comics and stuff are really enjoyable to get into. Some are forgettable, some are really good. But it's all just more, I don't know, stuff to get into, and it expands the universe in a good way that's enjoyable.
Well, one thing I'll say about Aliens is they took the concepts from Alien and they made it bigger and they expanded on it. And the early Dark Horse comics kept that spirit where they were always making the world and making the universe bigger and giving you big ideas, which is something that the sequel films kind of lacked. They could never really.
Yeah, the comics are much better than later films.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'd take the early run of Dark Horse stuff any day over any of the later films.
Yeah, I mean, there's a heap of stuff that's been done as comics that would have made much better films as sequels, but you know what studios like, they do stupid stuff and hire people and fire people and rewrite things to death.
And you know, just like James Cameron did in this movie, where he kind of expanded on the biology and the science behind the xenomorph species, where we've introduced the xenomorph queen in the early Dark Horse comics. And obviously this is before all the Prometheus and all these other fucking films came out, but in the early Dark Horse comics, it's actually established that there is in fact a alien homeworld, like a xenomorph homeworld where they actually originate from. And on that homeworld, where the xenomorphs are the dominant species, there is actually a super hive with a queen mother who's like a super gigantic alien queen. And just the whole idea of it, just getting bigger and bigger and expanding the species more, and the idea of what they are and what they're capable of. They really tried their best to get the pulp, get the most out of that in the comics. Whereas sometimes with the later movies, it just felt like they were going for the easy road of just stick to the formula that's already been established in the previous two movies, and we're not going to change too much from that.
Yeah, there's a lot of just redundant repetition of those later films. I did rewatch Prometheus again this week for the first time in years, and it's like, if you pretend it's got nothing to do with Alien, it's a watchable thriller, science fiction, fantasy, whatever. But it just repeats a whole bunch of stuff from the very first Alien and very little new stuff, and goes nowhere. It's like,
yeah, and like, don't get me wrong, like, even though I complain about the other movies a lot, but I still have watched them to death and will continue to watch them, just because, like, when you're a fan of something, you're still going to watch stuff you don't like just for the purpose of whatever reason. I don't know, that kind of intangible, I just need to experience this, or I need to re-examine or study this. We all have our different reasons for rewatching this stuff. And, I do have my issues with Alien 3. But I will still watch it. I still think it's a kind of a strong movie on its own merits, even if it's very flawed. Alien Resurrection, I have a pretty low opinion of. Like, apart from some of the set designs and creature designs, I don't find much more good in that movie. Prometheus, yeah, it's very visually impressive. Like what Johnny was saying, it probably would have worked better if you weren't so heavily associating it with Alien and thinking of it as an Alien prequel that somehow has to line up with what you've
Alien
seen
Attack
already.
on my own, my cat was going mental and could not stop meowing, so I gave him some more food to quiet him up.
Your cat was complaining that Jonesy was not featured in this movie, and that would probably be another mark against this, that Jonesy's role is diminished somewhat. But look, at least he got to survive, and that's the most important thing.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, we're gonna finish up, and to take us out, I'm gonna play a trailer for Aliens.
Awesome. Take care, everybody. Hope you enjoyed the show and enjoy this movie. And if you haven't watched this movie, bloody get to watch it.
You better. We'll come after you. We'll get you when you're sleeping.
Yeah, they mostly come at night. Mostly.
Just tell me one thing, Burke. You're going out there to destroy them, right? Not to study, not to bring back, but to wipe them out.
That's the plan.
All right, people, on the ready line. Are you me? Yeah! Are you me? Yeah! Get on the ready line, Marine! Get something to die! Get on the ready line! moving. Talk to me, Hudson.
I got signals. I got readings in front and behind.
There's nothing back here.
Look, I'm telling you, there's something moving and it ain't us.
Get them out of there!
They cut the power.
How could they cut the power, man? They're animals. There's movement all over the place. 5 meters, man. 4.
Aliens. This time, it's war.